Professor Deborah Mayer, Executive Dean, Faculty of Science, Professor Olaniyi Fawole, inductee, Professor Linus Opara, respondent, Distinguished Professor and DST NRF South African Research Chair in Post-Harvest Technology at Stellenbosch University, senior leaders of the university, members of Senate and other academics, distinguished guests, and in particular, the family of Professor Fawole, Carissa, Edmund, and Jonathan. Our students who have joined us this afternoon, and all who have joined, including our online audience. Sanibonani, Goeienaand, good evening, Tobela, and also in Yoruba, Ikale. It is indeed a great honor and special privilege for me to welcome you to the Professorial Inaugural Lecture of Professor Fawole. As I do so, I wish to express a warm welcome to his loved ones, special guests, and colleagues. This is indeed a proud and joyful, yet a landmark moment for all of you, for Professor Fawole, for us here at UJ and higher education in South Africa and beyond. The inauguration of professors is a public ceremony in which newly appointed professors are inducted into office by the Vice-Chancellor, and I act on his behalf this afternoon and deliver their inaugural addresses. This ceremony has its roots in medieval university times and serves multiple purposes. Firstly, it is an expression of welcome and an entry for new professors joining the circle of colleagues who are already professors. Secondly, it provides a platform for the professors to display their expertise in the discipline and showcase their research. In isiXhosa we say, ukutweswa isidanga kwisigaba sobunjingwa lwazi. This, loosely translated, refers to assuming the role of the professor. Of course, in colonial traditions subscribed to by universities, this refers to the gown and the cap. Traditionally, the wise one would accept a blanket in gubo. Once we have listened to the inaugural address, the gown or in gubo, denoting the professorship, will be formally assumed. Today, we gather to bear witness to the entry of Professor Fawole to the illustrious community of scholars at the university. It is a celebration of the contributions to the discipline and ultimately the impact on society. Professors provide a university with its identity, character, academic legitimacy, and integrity. The inaugural lecture is a rite of passage following the confirmation of the appointment of the person as a professor. This evening, we will listen to Professor Fawole as the gown goes to town. By this, I mean that the power of the inaugural address is when the expertise is showcased beyond the corridors of the university and reverberates with society. It stands out as a moment of pride for the incumbent, the family, fellow scholars, the university, and ultimately society. For the German philosopher and diplomat Humboldt, a university referred to the whole community of scholars and students engaged in common search for truth. Newman talked about teaching universal knowledge. Recently, universities have been viewed as instrumentalist, serving the purpose of the economy or utilitarian in purpose. I would hope that we can break out of these narrow conceptualizations and reflect on the university as contributing to public good. Edward Said, in an article on defiance and taking positions, offers a formulation of the ideal role of the true intellectual as one who commands a vast knowledge of the individual's discipline, who is rigorous in the analysis of literature, who views being an intellectual as a vocation, the intellectual who considers it necessary to step into the public sphere and to speak truth to power, namely to question, interpret, and understand authority rather than consolidating it, to step out of the boundaries of the academy to connect oneself, to affiliate oneself, to align oneself with an ongoing process or contest of some sort, perhaps with the aim of improving the lot of the oppressed. The intellectual who functions as a kind of public memory to recall what is forgotten or ignored, to make the connections that are otherwise hidden, and to provide alternatives for mistaken policies. It remains then for us, as a university with a Pan-African vision, to derive our mandate as intellectuals and as professors. How do we embrace the role of a professor as a disruptor while continuing to be flagship carriers of our disciplines? This evening, we will listen to Professor Fawole as one further step in the journey of being a professor. This is a journey which does not culminate once this lecture has been given. It is a self-reflective pause in the journey of the professor with a promise of more to enrich our minds and simultaneously contributing to the rich intellectual body of work in the discipline. Let me now invite the Executive Dean, Professor Deborah Mayer, to introduce Professor Fawole. I thank you, Riele Boga, Ngiabonga, Bayadanki, and Adupe.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me to introduce you to Professor Olaniyi Amos Fawole, and he was born in Ibadan, Oyo State in Nigeria. He obtained a BSc Honours in Botany from the Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, and he obtained an MSc in Botany from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, and eventually completed his PhD in 2013 at Stellenbosch University, a PhD Agric in Horticultural Sciences. His PhD research led to the development of a maturity index and storage protocols for the South African pomegranate industry, contributing to the growth of the industry. In addition, his doctoral study resulted in his publication of 12 peer-reviewed papers and earned him a Y1 NRF rating 2 years post-PhD. I think that deserves a round of applause. In addition to the Claude Lyon NRF and Stellenbosch University postdoctoral fellowships he received between 2013 and 2015. He was also awarded the Postgraduate Teaching and Development Fellowship at Stellenbosch University. And during the same period, he was also an adjunct lecturer at Elsenburg Agricultural College in Western Cape. In 2016, Prof. Fawole was appointed as a researcher and promoted to senior researcher in 2018. He was also acting as SARCI chair for a year when the SARCI chairholder was on sabbatical leave in 2017. Prof. Fawole joined the University of Johannesburg in October 2019 as an associate professor, where he established the Post-Harvest and Agro-Processing Research Group and was promoted to full professor in October 2021. From these timelines, Professor Fawole rose through the ranks to a full professor of post-harvest and agro-processing 8 years post-PhD. Another period I think we need to give him a round of applause. Prof. Fawole has been highly productive and impactful as an academic and received numerous national and global recognitions. In the last 8 years, he secured research funding to the value of over 10 million from national and international sources. That's over 10 million rand. He is an affiliate member of reputable international organizations, including the World Academy of Sciences in Italy, African Academy of Sciences in Kenya, African Science Leadership Program in South Africa, and Science and Technology in Society in Japan. Olaniyi is one of the leading authors in the world on post-harvest technology and agro-processing of pomegranate fruit, according to Scopus. He has published 139 peer-reviewed articles, including 21 conference papers, and has a Google Scholar H-index of 34 and a Scopus H-index of 29. He holds the title of Full Professor Extraordinary at Stellenbosch University and Tshwane University of Technology. He also holds a visiting professor position at Precious Cornerstone University in Nigeria and is a senior research fellow at the UNESCO International Center for Biotechnology in Nigeria. Professor Fawole prepares his students to be career and society ready and promotes career and growth opportunities in the horticultural and food industries. He has mentored and graduated 36 postgraduate students, including 9 doctoral, 9 masters, and 18 honors students, with 24 postgraduate students currently under his supervision. He is an exemplary academic and has a leadership track record that has earned him several invitations to advisory boards and scientific committees, the detail of which you can find in the booklet with a more detailed CV of Professor Fawole. He is currently the convener of the Plant Sciences 1 Rating Review Panel for the National Research Foundation. He has co-chaired the 3rd All-Africa Post-Harvest Congress and Exhibition hosted by the African Union Commission in 2021, and convened the 5th International Symposium on Pomegranate and Minor Mediterranean Fruits under the aegis of the International Society for Horticultural Sciences in February 2022. Prof. Fawole was elected the chair of the ISHS group working on pomegranate and minor Mediterranean fruits, and was also awarded the medal from the same organization for his meritorious service to society in May 2022. In his spare time, Professor Fawole engages in social media scholarship, creating awareness about food lost and waste on LinkedIn, with a following exceeding 27,000. Colleagues, I think Professor Fawole forgot to mention that his biggest successes are sitting right next to him, so he has his family with him as well. So he's a very busy family man and a caring father at the same time, and a loving husband, I'm told. So it's my pleasure, colleagues, to introduce you to Professor Fawole.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mayor. Thank you. I really appreciate that. The day has come, isn't it? It's a dream come true. Before I proceed, I would like to observe due protocols. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, Professor Mawala, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research and Internalization, Professor Sia, Dean of the Faculty of Science, Professor Deborah Meyer, Distinguished Professor Umezuruke Linus Opara, my respondent and my mentor, HOD of Botany and Plant Biotechnology, Prof. Benter, you there. All professors seated, all academic and non-academic staff of the Department of Botany and Plant Biotechnology, all UJ academic and non-academic staff, students of the University of Johannesburg, families and friends, all invited guests. I've got my family here, as just mentioned. My parents are back home watching online, and they told me that they are proud of me. So I'm full of joy today, and the joy can be likened to when I got married, or when I have my 2 children, or even when I got my PhD, in horticultural sciences. But it's so special. This one, I mean, one can do another PhD, but I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I'm very, very grateful for this. I'm going to go straight into my talk, and then we will talk about appreciation into full detail. So the goal of this research or of this talk, I set 3 goals for this talk. The first one is to actually raise awareness on food loss and waste, because this is very, very important to me. The second one is to shed light on the connection between the Sustainable Development Goal that I'm into and the other Sustainable Development Goals, especially Sustainable Development Goal 12 and Target 12.3. I will then go into advocating for the need for capacity building in my domain. So in order to achieve these goals, I've structured my presentation in a way that will make a logical transition into the goals. I just mentioned now, or as they've just mentioned, I obtained a PhD in horticultural sciences, and this is a very nice thing I like about horticultural sciences. I get to work with fruit, colorful fruit. I get to work with flowers, and after experiment, you get to eat this fruit as a PhD student. You know, it's healthy, it's nutritious. So I mean, it's something that is not too much or so much to ask for. You know, the horticultural industry has contributed or is contributing a lot to the economy. If you look at this slide here, the bar chart here, I mean the pie chart here, you see that the horticultural industry actually contributes a significant amount into the workforce in agriculture, which is very, very important. It contributes or enriches the diet, it promotes health, it increases income. And we're talking about income for farmers. We have about 30 million small farmers or farms in Africa. We're talking about women, we're talking about youth that actually participate in the value chain of this. So it's a very, very important sector to the economy and to humankind. However, there are challenges that we have to focus on. And it's a global challenge. There are global challenges. In fact, in agriculture as a whole, we're talking about how we can feed a growing population. We know that by 2050, the world population will reach about 9 billion. So how will the industry cope with the demand that is ahead of us? We're talking about providing livelihood for farmers. Like I said, we have so many, 33 million of them. Most of them, women, smallholders. We're talking about how can we, use this to alleviate poverty, because they are actually the poorest amongst us, in Africa. And we're talking about when we grow the industry, how we are not going to destroy the planet. How can we do this in a sustainable manner? So if you look at this, we're talking about the people, the profit, and the planet. As a researcher, I've worked for over 10 years now. I would say that my academic basket, fruit and vegetable basket, is quite full. I've worked on an array of fruits. However, there's one fruit that stands so beloved, I would say, that I love so much and that I've really worked on, and that's pomegranate fruit. Over the years, I'm going to show you what we have done and how we've actually impacted the industry. One might say it's a small industry. Yes, it's a small industry, but it's quite relevant to the economy, even in the world, and I will show you in a second. In the past decade, the production has grown by 46%. Export has grown by 244%. Publication by 2,137%. And we have graduated 26 postgraduate students. I'm saying this because I have here my mentor that founded this research, that actually introduced me to this research, and we're leading this research globally together. We have developed technological innovations, products, processes. We have built research infrastructure, human capital, and we have facilitated access to information to the industry. And this has really impacted, the industry. And I'm not saying that we are saving the industry, but we know that our contribution to the industry is quite significant. So what I do in this area, like I just mentioned, we focus on the Sustainable Development Goal 12, and in particular, 12.3. And we're talking about Sustainable Development Goal. When we talk about this, we must know that we're talking about goals that have to be met in 8 years' time. When we say 2030, it really sounds so far away. We should be talking about goals that we are supposed to meet in 8 years' time. So this is very, very important. So the goal and the target is to reduce post-harvest losses and food loss and waste by 50% to half them actually by 2030. And why is this so important? We're looking at addressing another pandemic, a pandemic that has actually been with us for a very long time that people don't know. And unfortunately, this pandemic doesn't have a vaccine, or you cannot even manufacture any vaccination for this pandemic. It's been around for a long time. We're talking about 1/3 of what we produce going into the bin, the landfill. We're talking about 1.3 billion tons of food, going to waste. And we're talking about $1 trillion to the costs, that costs us globally per year, just per year. If you think about it, we're talking about 1 trillion. This is a $1 trillion opportunity. Because, Tesla, 1-point-something trillion value, it's like throwing Tesla into the bin every year. Exactly, that's what it is. So what this means is that there's a whole lot of opportunity in this field. But it's not only about the food, it's also about the other things, It's about the carbon emission, contribution to the greenhouse gas emission, contribution to, the water that is lost, the land, that is lost, and the loss of biodiversity. In fact, if food loss and waste were a country, it would be the third, largest source of greenhouse emission. And we're talking about only the CO2 part. There's still the methane part that's actually produced when food is thrown into the landfill. We're talking about methane that is 25 times, more potent than CO2. So this is very, very important. And South Africa is not spared. It's a pandemic and it's global. A report by WW Health, it's the same story. 10 million tons of food go to waste. A third, talking about fruit and vegetables being and cereal being about 70% of what is lost, and they attributed this to malnutrition, basically. And they say that if we can actually reduce loss and waste in fruit and vegetable, we'll be able to improve nutrition and well-being. CSR also said the same thing, but what is important here is the conclusion was we need to inform action through robust scientific evidence. Very, very important. You will see that out of these food categories, fruit and vegetables are lost the most, 45%. Let's look into the relevance of fruit and vegetable in our diet. You all know already, we know that they are implicated in a whole lot of health, issues. We know that we've talked about, 1 apple a day keeps the doctor away. We're talking about let food be the medicine and medicine be the food. We're talking about scientific evidence that actually demonstrates that food is a medicine. We're even talking about how we can change the world, how we can save the planet by going flexitarian, it's a diet, a little meat and eat a lot of vegetables. We must eat a lot of vegetables, yes. So you can see that fruit and vegetables are very, very important. But this is the story. This is the story. Look at the landfill. 24% of waste in the landfill is actually food. 24% of what is dumped is food. On the other hand, we are talking about 828 million people going hungry in the world. We dump a lot. When I saw this, I was very surprised because I thought plastic was the thing that we dump the most is food. So basically, we are feeding the landfill instead of feeding stomach of the people, feeding the landfill. And it's a massive, drain of resources, massive. It's just mentioned now, I engage in social media scholarship. And last year, I posted a poll, asking people that how many people can we actually feed if we don't waste food at all, It's interesting that 3% said they didn't care, that it wasn't their problem, Yeah. But 62% said 2 billion people that we'll be able to feed if we didn't actually waste at all. And it's true. The UN's published it, that we can actually feed, 6 billion people with the food that we throw away. So if you look at it, it's quite interesting because we have 28 million people that are going hungry, but we are throwing away food that can feed 2 billion people. That means we produce enough to feed the world, more than the population of the world. Basically, that's what it's talking about. That's the implication. If we look at food waste or food loss, because they are different. In developing world, it's more of food loss because we lose at the early stage of the value chain. And in the developed country, it's actually waste because at the retail and the consumer aspect side of the value chain, that's where the loss occur. You can see the map. You can see how it's all about in terms of the distribution of this. Let me take you into horticulture now. Now we're going to post-harvest physiology 101. As a post-harvest researcher, my main goal is to protect the quality integrity of the commodity in a way that it will get to the consumer. In doing so, the farmer will benefit from the input. We make money, we transform his life economically, and the consumer will have nutrition, basically. And the commodities are highly perishable because, when you harvest them, they actually still live, they respire, in terms of breathing, they release heat, they release moisture, they get sick, and they eventually die, If you add to this, the commodity still has to be taken to the consumer through a value chain. The chain might be short, it might be very long, like export market that can take 2 to 3 months. So if you look at this, you're dealing with something delicate, something highly perishable, but you still have to take it through a whole lot of time, fighting against time to deliver this. So in terms of perishable produce, we're actually leaking, wasting along the food value chain, the supply chain. And you can see that the basket, the producer's basket, is not the same as the consumer basket because you've lost so much along the line. So when you see 45%, you can see, and we know as post-service researchers where we can intervene, So when we talk about the losses or waste of food, there's no way we will not talk about the growing population of the world by 2050. There's no way we will not talk about pollution. There's no way we will not talk about the impact of climate change on production of the food in the future. So you can see, if you put this together, it's a mega picture, it's a mega problem, very big problem. And that's why we have to think think about an holistic approach, to solve this problem. So it's an opportunity to actually, solve other sustainable development goals. And this is what we must be communicating in terms of, okay, it's an opportunity. We need money to actually fix this problem. we need to be clear on our messaging that investment into any nutrition project will yield 16%. So it's not like, give me this money. It's not a donation. It's actually an investment. And we can see how nutrition is central to this sustainable development goal. Here is the father of post-harvest research, Professor Adel Kader. He put it very clearly what we must do on the African continent in terms of solving this. One thing that some of the things that came up was we need to apply knowledge, current knowledge. We need that we have weak research. We have weak research and development capacity. And he mentioned what we must do. And this are the guiding principles, guiding information for us or for me growing up as a young researcher. So what we are trying to do here is to see how we can, repair the pipeline, where we leak. And I'm going to share with you from the pomegranate perspective. So let's look at the fruit itself. It's a very, very ancient crop, and it's interwoven into so many cultures. And in fact, some scholars say that the apple eaten by Adam and Eve was not actually apple, it was pomegranate. Yeah. Yes. The fruit itself, it's got many parts, the arrows, and the arrows has seed, and the seed you can get your oil, and you can also get your juice from it. I had an opportunity to actually host an international conference, on pomegranate. And the minister of Agriculture and Land Reform actually opened it. And one of the keynotes that we invited was Professor Thomas Barberan. And he actually gave a lecture that really showed how important this crop is. It told us about the phytochemicals, the health-giving properties of this fruit. And the most interesting part is it's not really the phytochemical, it's actually the conversion of the phytochemical that actually gives that health-giving property. And this led to the discovery of one compound called urolithin, and we now have urolithin A, B, and C. But what happened to this is your gut microbiota actually converts the compounds into this urolithin that is now more potent, that can give health effects. And from there, it's opened a wide range, of research into cancer research. And you can see that's what is driving the production of pomegranate worldwide. And South Africa is strategically located in a way that we can, during cancer season, we can actually flood the market in the Northern Hemisphere, because 90% of the countries that produce pomegranate, they're actually in the Northern Hemisphere. So when they're off-season, we can flood the market. So there's a huge potential for growth in the industry. I showed you this earlier. The question is, what are our impacts? I will share some with you, how we transform research into impact, and which areas of the value chain we actually address. I will share 4 of them with you. The first one is we supported harvesting practices. So we developed an industry because when they started, they didn't know how to harvest because it's a non-climateric crop. And it's red all the way. So you actually don't know when it's ready, And we know that if you wait until it's stays so long on the tree, it's not going to reach the consumer. If you harvest too early, it's not going to have the quality attributes. So what we did here was to, change what they do, back it up by science, and develop an index that can actually help the industry. And we went through scientific steps that actually helped us achieve this. One thing that we observed along the way is they had about 8 cultivars. And the first thing we did was to develop, discriminate and describe this cultivar. Is this good for export? Is this good for processing? Is this good for other uses? And from there, we were able to, have specific developmental stages for the fruits, and then which led to having harvest windows, which we then simulated the value chain, the shipment of the commodity, say to Europe for 8 to 6 weeks, and then we subjected it to shelf life condition, and from there we were able to, develop harvest index that the industry now prescribe for farmers. So this is very, very important and very, very impactful. The second one is about temperature. Temperature is the single most important attribute or factor that results in perishability or post-harvest life of any perishable commodity. And the work we did actually informed the Export Board of South Africa, the PPECB, on how the commodities can be shipped to the export market. We did this in this work, which was published, and you can see how the temperatures that we used were used to prescribe the industry export and logistic purposes. The other one that I will share with you is we know that pomegranate has a lot of post-harvest issues. So at the pack house level, we know that you can have the right temperature, you can even optimize it. The more you have supplemental, technologies or treatment, the more you actually, extend the relative post-harvest life, prolong the relative post-harvest life of that commodity. So what we did here in the first work that we did was to look into packaging systems that can help, in extending shelf life or post-harvest life of our commodities. And one thing here that is very important, very impactful, was there were so many liners, packaging liners in the industry, and the farmers, the packers, they wanted to know which one should we use. They are very expensive, from very cheap to which one can we use? And we found out that some actually are very useful than the other in terms of controlling, weight loss and decay, and also visual appeal. The other one is we look at an array of other treatments, talking about edible coating technology, and looking into putrescine application, even fungicides, to reduce decay. So these are some of the things that, helped in developing or strengthening the post-harvest handling of the fruit. One 4R aspect that I will mention that we also conducted was on, non-destructive measurement of quality and even detection of disease. There's this mud called false coding mud. It bores into the fruit, and you can see, so you cannot detect during sorting. And we also have black heart, disease that unless you cut the fruit, you won't actually know. So we deploy a technology, we innovated this technology, we apply a technology that is used for something else to actually dictate these diseases and be able to make a prediction, and so that when the consignment is shipped, it's not actually thrown away on the other side, because there's a very strict tolerance on the other side. The last one that I will share with you is about value addition. And here we applied bioeconomic and circular thinking to how we conducted our work. And this is in line with the agriculture and agro-processing master plan that was just signed in May by the Department of Agriculture. A very, very big one and very promising that I'm looking forward to. We know that if we can transform our commodity from one step to the other, we add value to it. We know that at the end of the day, it's all about saving the harvest. It's all about saving the harvest. And this was inspired by one of my routine visits, to the farm. I do visit the farm. And I saw a whole lot of pomegranates lying on those. I asked, what's going on with this? It said they're some burn, we throw them away. To ship them for processing, it costs more than the profit. So we just bury them. So this inspired us to actually conduct research on what can we do to this so-called neglected raw material. And then we know that if you want to set up a business based on this raw material, you must know how much you actually waste, how much raw material that you have. We conducted research on assessing, quantifying how much we actually waste in the industry, both on the farm and the packers level. And this material, we know that if we can have scientific intervention to actually transfer them to value-added products, we'll be able to create a sector within the fresh produce industry to transform the industry. So the first part of this agro-processing part was to do some dehydration of the edible part. We developed some products, dried arrows using different technologies, even the powder, juice powder. And that thinking, when I got to UG, actually led to a development of a product that's actually launched. This product is now on the shelf. And this project was sponsored by GIDA, Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, Gauteng Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. And this also, in terms of the seed, because during processing, you also have a whole lot of seed, waste. We also developed a protocol for extracting grain oil that is actually sustainable, that doesn't have any impact on the environment. The other part is to look at the peel. We know that the peel itself has threefold of the antioxidant that we actually consume from the from the edible part of the fruit. And using metabolomic approach, we're able to know what we can use for this waste, and in which industry, different industry. Let me show you one that we are doing it currently now at UJ. We've been able to fractionate, and stabilize, and then use the product to functionalize edible coating. And then use the coating to extend the shelf life of pomegranate. So we're using pomegranate waste to extend the shelf life of pomegranate, which I thought was quite interesting. And from some of the things that we have done, you can see that we are able to actually extend the shelf life of minimally processed pomegranate arrow. We further just decided, let's leave this, let's see what will happen. After 2 months, there was still no growth, fungal growth. So this really opened up our eyes in terms of what we can do. We have to go back and see if we can develop products, sustainable product, antimicrobial products from what we have done. So in concluding, you will see that there is a whole lot of connection between the Sustainable Development Goal 12, the target 12.3, and the other Sustainable Development Goal. And food loss and waste is actually a big opportunity towards the other Sustainable Development Goals. But it's not going to be easy. We need to do this through generation and application of current knowledge, and also building capacity is very, very critical. The other thing I want to mention and put out there to my colleague is that this approach must be multidisciplinary. There is no faculty within the university that cannot get on board with this mission. Because if you look at the food and nutrition systems, it's highly connected with other systems. We're talking about the environmental, the transportation, the governmental, healthcare, the cultural system, and the economic system, of course. So the question is, how can we come together and actually use this approach to address the issue of food loss and waste? The third one, remark that I wanted to mention is that the need to have a digital and smart agricultural technologies to deploy this is very, very important, because with this, we'll be able to make predictions. We will be able to do things in real time. We will be able to, to know our mistakes and correct immediately. So if you look at some of the examples, we need real-time and continuous monitoring. And for transparency, really, the technology can help us. We know that we are raising against quality. We know the factors like temperature and the storage environment. We know that safety is very important. How can technology help us to ensure this? How can it be that we know this while it's happening and not after it has happened? So that we can make quick interventions, we can make our data traceable and transparent, and then we can prevent the occurrence of the losses. If you look at this, I know my colleagues are working in blockchain and all that, you will see that the value chain itself is all about data. It's all about information sharing from one person, one level to the other. It's all about logistic connection. How can we use technology, to monitor those processes, and how can we use our technology, to protect the integrity of the information that is shared in this food value chain? We are doing some work in this area. We have 3 thematic areas that we are doing here at UJ, and we are looking forward to collaboration, and we're looking forward to great future ahead here at the University of Johannesburg. On this note, I would like to appreciate my support system. Of course, I would like to thank God first for giving me health and for blessing me to do this work. My parents, like I said, they are very proud of me, and I called them this morning, and they are watching right now. I would like to thank them very much for their sacrifice. They really, I'm also proud to have them as my parent. I would like to thank my wife. She's gone out with the little one. For being there for us. She always say 3 boys. She's taking care of 3 boys. So for taking care of the 3 boys in the house, and for really being a good and caring wife. And of course to my kids, Jonathan and Hedman. I hope you understand what I was trying to share. And you know that when Dad is away, that it's all about fruits and vegetables, and in particular pomegranate. I would like to thank my supervisors, my role model, and my influence. I will start with Professor Van Staden. I've had the privilege of being mentored by great people. Prof. Van Staden brought me to this country in 2007, the top researcher in his field. And then from there, I moved on to join Professor Linus Opara. It was my PhD promoter, then a role model. Then he became my friend. We're good friends, and we share information, we do things together. So I really want to thank you for being there. I would also like to thank Prof. Keda. Prof. Keda is an influencer. He influenced my career. I use his paper a lot for my PhD. And during my PhD, I had an opportunity to meet him in person at a conference. So we chatted, and I asked him, Prof, I would like to do my postdoc with you. He immediately said no. I was like, what? He said, well, I'm retired to start with, but you are doing a great job here. Why do you want to leave Africa? You should stay here and do your work, you're presenting all this. He said that the problem we have in Africa is unique. We cannot extrapolate from what they have in the US. So we need people. We need to build capacity. He told me that. And unfortunately, 2 days later, he passed on. So this is really very, very key to me in terms of the message. And this is also one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing now. I would like to thank my colleagues, my friends. A lot of them are here. I'm so blessed to have you around. I won't have time to mention their names one by one, but you really a great friend and great colleagues. I really appreciate your presence. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the institution, the University of Johannesburg, for the support they have given me, tremendous support in this 3 years. Thank you, the Vice Chancellor of the DVC, University of Johannesburg. Thank you in particular to Professor Deborah Mayer. I really thank you. My current HOD, Prof. Venter, thank you very much. I would like to thank my former HOD as well, Prof. Motiti. I thank her very much, very much. And my colleagues from the department, they made the department actually a good place to stay, to work as well. Yeah, and finally, I would like to acknowledge my students. You see, something about students is they help grow your career, and that's one thing that professors don't say. They actually helped grow my career. And of course, some will say, but you also imparted them, you transferred the knowledge. Yes, but if they leave tomorrow, what will you do? You cannot do anything about it. You cannot force them. So I would like to thank them very much. And the PAL team, we have a team, we are now about 30 people at UJ in our group. We're doing very fantastic work, and we're looking forward to doing much more at the University of Johannesburg. And to my founders, what will I do without you guys? I would like to thank these institutions. I wouldn't want to mention their name one by one because of the time. But I thank them very much, and I look forward to more opportunities, to get money from these people as an investment and not a donation, because any money put into nutrition, food and nutrition security is actually an investment. I thank you all for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Fawole. And may I stand all existing protocols. I also like to recognize my colleagues here, the Deputy Vice Chancellor and the Executive Dean of Science, and in particular, the family of Professor Fawole, Carissa, and the boys, and the friends of Professor Fawole here in South Africa and around the world. I want to thank the university for giving me the privilege and the honor of responding to Niyi's inspiring and illuminating talk. I call him Niyi, and that came from the first correspondence we had. And other people call him Ola or Olaniyi. And I stuck to that first one because that first contact was very powerful and useful. The Deputy Vice Chancellor has already explained to us the background and the history of inaugural lectures and why it is important in the life of academics. I should like to add that what we have listened this afternoon and this evening is more than inaugural. Professor Fawole has shared with us his experiences and impacts as an internationally acclaimed researcher and academic. He has demonstrated through his work that scientific research can be an exciting endeavor if we find a niche and pursue it with vigor, with energy and enthusiasm, but also, most importantly, to solve practical problems in the lives of people and society at large. From a humble botanist to an ethnopharmacist, to what he became when he left Stellenbosch University, a post-harvest technologist and engineer, and now, more recently, as a food scientist and technologist. He has shown that the developmental challenges facing us today are best addressed by multidisciplinary teams and through collaboration. His statistics are amazing and inspirational to both old people like myself and the younger generation. And those statistics have already been described. I'm not going to go through them again. Am I surprised? Not at all. Even as a postgraduate student, he played a major role in projects and affairs of other students beyond his own. He helped to supervise the various laboratories that we set up at Stellenbosch University under the South African Researchers Initiative. He also trained his own fellow students, postgraduate students, in analytical methods and statistics. Indeed, he mentored his fellow students. So what was my encounter with Professor Fawole that you know? Exactly 13 years, 3 months, and 15 days ago, on a Sunday morning, exactly 9:14 a.m., I opened my Yahoo email. I was just fresh at Stellenbosch. Only about 2 or 3 months or 4 arrived. So I was still using my Yahoo email. Bang, there was this email from somebody I never knew. And it read like this, just introduction. He said, "Hello, Professor Umezurike Linus Opara." Somebody addressing me my full name. And I've always looked for an opportunity for people to know that my first name is Umezurike, not Linus. Right? And so this young man, I don't know where he was coming from, addressed me. And he went on to say, just briefly, "I got your email address from a friend of mine." And on he went. "I'm interested in post-service research that is going on in your research group." And he went on and said, "I would like to know if you would be willing to supervise a PhD." He didn't say me as a PhD student. "If you'd be willing to supervise a PhD student next year, January, as I'm interested in joining your group." Exactly 1 hour later, I replied him. I must add, that email, the full email, I have a copy of it, I still keep it. For the last 13 years, I've been using it to mentor and educate young people how to communicate to potential supervisors. And so the conversation started. I told him, "I'll be willing to supervise you. Could you send me a copy of your CV?" Which he did. And as I went through this 2 or 3 page CV, which is different from what you have today of your CV, something struck me, and I'll read it for you. Just one line. He said, "My personal abilities, ability to work as an independent researcher, and also to work in teams. I'm a fast learner, and also enjoy interdisciplinary environments." So putting this together, my encounter with Professor Fawole. So what are the key words I can use to describe him over these years? Given this background, I consider him as a pace setter, and these are evidence-based. I consider him as a first learner. He's a leader. And I always try to challenge my students and colleagues. Everybody can be a leader in your own little space. As a graduate student, you don't have to wait until you graduate before you lead. And that's what he has. That's my experience with Professor Fawole. He's a consensus builder. And he's very, very generous with his talent and time. And anybody who has encountered him will also agree with me. Not just as a graduate student or postgraduate student or a researcher. He played a fundamental role in our establishing our research and program on post-harvest technology of pomegranates, which is now recognized globally as the leading research entity in the world. Even though South Africa is the smallest producer, we have the highest output of knowledge in this area, as measured by the traditional indices, peer-reviewed impact factor publications, and number of students that are graduated. He single-handedly, PhD student just arrived. Just little information I gave him, he took a tour of South Africa, covering the Western Cape to the northern provinces, and gave me what I still consider to be a seminal report on the status of pomegranate in South Africa and around the world. And I can give him that credit, that single report has actually redefined the research on pomegranates, not only in South Africa, but around the world. And that is very, very important. Now, remember that did not form part of his thesis. This is what I'm talking about. This is leadership. This is grabbing an opportunity. And this is what you have just listened to and seen in his presentation. During one of our conversations, we're thinking about how do we get industry into this. I took Niyi to an industry role player. It was called BioGold Limited. He will remember this. And I said, we need to get industry money. I had some money from my Sachi chair. And I said, we have to get money from industry to support what we are doing. He went with me. We spent about an hour and a half with the general manager of BioGold Limited in Stellenbosch at that time. And he challenged us to give him a proposal. 48 hours on the dot. Olaniyi sent me a proposal. And we arranged a meeting and went back to BioGold. And on the spot, they gave us 300,000 rands to start our work in pomegranate. What an ideal student. What an ideal colleague. What an ideal researcher to have with you. This is what we are talking about. In 2017, I started getting bored, like most academics, right? I said I needed to get out of this lab and do something else. And I told Olaniyi, you take care of the lab. We had about 20 or so postgraduate students and the rest. You take care of the students. You take care of other postdocs. He was just a young researcher that started. And I can tell you that 12 months later, that was the most productive year. So I thought, why do I need to come back? At the end of 2017, we graduated 8 students almost in one ceremony. 4 PhD students, 4 MSc students, and published 27 papers, all of them impact factor, in 1 year. And I was not there. And he was leading the team. So what are we trying to say here? So what you have heard from him today is just a little piece of the man that you have here at the University of Johannesburg. Professor Fawole, as an international, I consider him someone who thinks globally and acts locally. He's an Afrocentric. You've listened to him. He believes that it is our duty and our responsibility to envision and create the Africa we want. And you can see that in his presentation. And there are so many examples I can give you to demonstrate that. At the University of Johannesburg, I've had the opportunity to visit him in his lab and interact with his students. And I can tell you that the best of him is yet to come. If you can give me a round of applause for that, please. He has established what I consider, given my over 30 years experience, doing this in New Zealand, in Europe, in the Middle East and Africa. He has established a leading and formidable growing research group on post-harvest technology and value addition. He has established a state-of-the-art facility that will be the envy of our peers and colleagues around the world. Here at University of Johannesburg, take a look. Go and visit and then compare with what you have seen around the world. He is building and continues to build both local and international networks, and he considered these as pathways for mutually beneficial collaborations and projects and programs. Having observed him over the years and seen what he's already accomplished here at the University of Johannesburg, I will not hesitate to say that the future of post-harvest and agro-processing research at the University of Johannesburg and South Africa is alive and bright. As demonstrated by Professor Fawole during his presentation, the critical importance of partnerships and collaboration within and across disciplines cannot be overemphasized. If you look at the publication I've shown you, you see people from different backgrounds and disciplines. And I think that's what he has brought to both Stellenbosch and University of Johannesburg. And I just look at the statistics. I had a look. We try to read wide. And I looked at the Nobel Prize winners from 1901 to 1915. And I compared it with 2001 and 2015. Just think about physics as an example. Between 1901 and 1915, 15 years, 11 people won the Nobel Prize as individuals. In 2001 and 2015, 0 individual won the Nobel Prize. And this applies to both medicine and chemistry. So the evidence is out there that what Professor Fawole has been preaching to us is something that we must embrace. Colleagues, in concluding, Professor Fawole has demonstrated a remarkable progression as a botanist to establish himself as a prolific and dynamic multidisciplinary researcher and educator. The evidence is out there. His research has impacted on the development of the South African and global fruit industry through science-based solutions, from assessing maturity indices to technologies for cold storage and packaging and to agro-processing to reduce losses and develop healthy products. His multidisciplinary and integrated approach to research, innovation, and capacity building is a model that warrants consideration and mainstreaming across disciplines and faculties. It is not something for the Faculty of Science alone. As South Africa, Africa, and the world struggles with the challenges of sustainable development, Professor Fawole has clearly shown us today that by saving our harvest one crop at a time, through research and innovation, it is possible to feed South Africa. It is possible to feed Africa. It is also possible to feed the world in a very sustainable way. I thank him for sharing his expertise with us. Thank you, Professor Fawole, and good luck for the next stages in your career. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Professor Opara. It was, as I was listening to you and going through the journey that you have, and you know, how the interaction developed, it was really something to reflect on. And I think for many individuals also in this room, as well as the online audience, I think it's a memory, and I think there are several takeaways, including right from the communication to all the other research and the impact that has come about. Our next step is actually to, let me call Professor Deborah Mayer. The two of us have the opportunity to gown Professor Fawole, and we'll try and do that. Right, as we conclude the proceedings for this this evening, first let me once again express appreciation. I'll start with the parents who are listening to the ceremony virtually, and of course to the family and to you, Professor Fawole. Let's give Professor Fawole once again a round of applause. I'm looking at you, Jonathan. I think in a few years, when you're going to be listening to this recording, you're going to say, "I have to do. There is some work to be done here," and I think that you will really have an appreciation. This is remarkable, and I really appreciated the way Professor Fawole that you combined right from SDG 2, which is zero hunger, to the different disciplines, talking about post-harvest, but also looking at the impact elements, looking at developing the index, the post-harvest index specifically for pomegranate. So it's really really well done, and we appreciate that we could access this work through your very nice presentation this evening. And you concluded with Food 4.0, which I think brings about multiple connects here with the University of Johannesburg and the wider community in terms of how do you actually bring the elements also of real time into the connect so that we can ultimately arrive to that zero hunger. With that, I would also take the opportunity, Professor Opara, once again, for you to join us from Stellenbosch to help us with this, for being the respondent, and for the very neat way in which you brought about and reflected on the journey, and also to sketch for us all the work and the accomplishments that have been attained, and how to also build on these. That's really appreciated. If we could please give Professor Opara a round of applause. The department head, thank you very much. Also Professor Fente, Professor Mutiti, and also, of course, to Professor Deborah Mayer for creating the ecosystem in the faculty. I'm always challenged because there are always multiple applications, grant applications, etc., that arise from the faculty, and that is quite reflective of the ecosystem that exists. So if we can also give the team a round of applause. None of this is, of course, possible from a coordination and administration perspective if it's not for the team, which is Bernice, Brad, Kevin, that is here. If you're seeing this online, it's because of the work that they have done in getting us together administratively. So I think a round of applause to them as well for that. Now that you've had some food or fruits for thought, I know you're now getting to a point of some thought for food. Our venue is adjacent. Please do join us, and thank you once again for joining us this evening, and also to our online audience. Thank you, and let's enjoy. Thanks.